Hi, friends. Welcome to the Friendship Flow. I'll be your host, Katy. And let me just start by telling you a little bit about myself and why I'm doing this podcast. So, a few years ago, I started really looking at friendship, especially in the wisdom years. As we age, it can become an issue. Some friendships deepen, some fade away, people leave, people pass away. So it's important as we age to really take a look at how friendships develop and how we can create that circle in our lives that helps support us. There's a author, Vivek Murthy, that wrote a book, Togetherness, The Healing Powers of Connection in a Sometimes Lonely World. And when I was reading this, it really made me think about as we age and those connections that mean a lot to us. And he says that when technology came into the play, it really started to disconnect us. It was supposed to be that technology would bring us more together and give us more connectivity, more communication. But it's actually done the opposite. And it started to isolate us, not only when we're aging, but for everyone. He says Gen Zs are really having a difficult time with loneliness. I'm focusing on aging because I am aging. So that's where I took the focus of friendship. And so what this podcast is going to be about, it's going to be a space. I want to create a space for women in their wisdom years. Friendship can be challenging. Also, friendships shift, some deepen, some drift. This podcast hopefully will help us explore how to grow, nurture, and let go with grace. So I came up with a 5-step approach for creating meaningful friendships. The 5 steps are self-awareness, connection, boundaries, growth, and joy. So self-awareness. We want to learn what our friendship needs are in patterns. We've created patterns over our lifetime of who we become friends with and why. And if we can look at that a little, it will help us develop those skills that we need to create that circle that will get us through connection, how to build authentic relationships, and boundaries. This is always a tough one. How to protect our energies and our well-beings and have the people in our lives that we need to be there and respectfully let the other relationships maybe stay at a distance. Growth. How to continue to create friendships and just let the friendships we have evolve. Enjoy. Infusing relationships with meaningful fun. So this week's deep dive is going to be self-awareness. So getting into self-awareness and why this matters. Self-awareness is the foundation of growth, relationships, emotional health. So I Googled the definition of self-awareness just to see where Google stood on this. And Google says, understanding our thoughts, behaviors, values, motivations, and personality traits, and recognizing how they affect us and others. Applying it to friendship, when we understand ourselves, we can create healthier, more authentic connections. We can learn what we need, what we value, and what drains us. When we have self-awareness, we can bring clarity to who we are and help us build healthier, more balanced friendships. We can improve emotional regulation, responding instead of reacting, which is a big problem for a lot of people. We tend to respond instead of taking that step back and thinking and reacting. Self-awareness fuels our personal growth by showing us our patterns, creates alignment when our choices match our values. It's like going into a dark room and turning on a light. When the room is dark, we don't see where anything is. We're bumping into things. We don't know where to go. When we flip the switch, we can see where to move with intention. Some of the things that come to mind when talking about self-awareness are triggers. We all have them. So recognizing your own triggers is a real powerful way of building self-awareness. We all have them, so it's something that from childhood, we just kind of let them go, and we know we react in certain ways in certain situations, but we don't often do anything about it until something happens that turns that switch up. Recognizing these triggers can really be a powerful way of building your self-awareness. It may be the tone of voice of somebody or a specific situation that happens, the way someone looks at you or greets you. Once we find out what they are, we can ask, where did that come from? We can start thinking back, what made me react that way? I'm not suggesting this will remove the triggers, but once you're aware, you can change your thoughts around them. So I listened to another podcast, some self-coaching, and Brooke Costello, who came up with a five-step approach to clarity, how to be clear about any circumstance. So the 5 steps she came up with was the circumstance itself, thoughts, feeling, actions, and results. So the circumstance is one thing you cannot change. For an example, weather, you can't change the weather. A flight being canceled, maybe. Somebody coming to your door. You can't change what is there, but you can change your thoughts about it. Maybe I hate the rain to, it's raining, I'll do something else today. Or maybe my flight got canceled. Oh, I'll never get there in time. My trip is ruined. To maybe something more in the lines of, well, it gives me a little time to catch up on my email and do something else. Just changing the thought pattern. And then your feelings around the thoughts, and then those actions. That's where what you do is going to create your consequence, your result. So if we can start really thinking about the circumstance and what our thoughts are and why we have them, we can change our results. Another thing we want to talk about when we talk about self-awareness is, have you ever considered whether you're an introvert or an extrovert? Vivek Murthy, the one that wrote the book about loneliness, he thinks this loneliness has become a bigger problem worldwide. That's why he got so deep into this subject. Have you ever considered whether you're an extrovert or an introvert? Back to Vivek Murthy, who spoke about loneliness. He talks a lot about this in his book. And it's important to know whether how much time you need to be alone. Is that loneliness, or is it time well spent that you need to rejuvenate yourself to be around people? And some people need to be around people more. And maybe they don't need as much time alone. And when that time becomes longer, it becomes loneliness. So just to take a look at what kind of person you are. Are you an introvert? Do you need that time for yourself? Are you using that time for yourself productively? Are you meditating, maybe doing yoga, whatever helps you get inside yourself and know yourself better? And if you're an extrovert, maybe taking those little breaks, you still need that time for yourself, but creating those circles of friends, of relationships that give you that time with people that you need. And how deep those connections are they working for you? You can be in a group of people and still be lonely. So if you're an extrovert, how do you create that path to having those relationships that fill that need to be with people? And getting to those things that build self-awareness. I mentioned meditation, yoga. There's journaling, reflection, recognizing your triggers and noticing what sets you off and asking, where does it come from? And maybe exploring a little bit more, maybe taking out that journal and coming up with some ways to adjust your thoughts. And you might be surprised. You might be surprised that how quickly you can change something, or how gnawing something is to you that you have the ability to change, but maybe it's not so easy. Adjusting thought patterns, changing your thoughts, changing your reactions. Growth doesn't happen overnight. It's an ongoing journey of reflection and adjustment. Self-awareness is a lifelong process, one we will keep revisiting and refining. The goal isn't perfection. It's growth and deeper understanding of ourselves and others. So maybe taking a journal and reflect on a recent interaction with a friend. How did I feel during that moment? Was there a trigger? And where did it come from? If I could rewind this, what thought or response might I have chosen instead? So maybe journal it, or maybe just sit with it, because small reflections can lead to big insights. You'd be surprised what you can learn from yourself if you could just get quiet and think about how your reactions change your results. You know, my mom and I have a close relationship, and she is now 84 years old, and she has lots of friends. And one day we went out, and she said to me, she just wasn't acting herself. She was a little crabby, honestly. And I kept trying to find out, like, what's the matter? Did something happen? And she just dismissed me. And finally, when we were ready to say our goodbyes, she said, you know, Katy, something did happen. And I said, oh, what's the matter? And she said, well, one of my friends just passed away. And she had a tear in her eye. And she said, and another friend just found out she has cancer. And as I age, I feel like I'm losing everyone. And my heart sunk for her. And that made me realize what a huge topic this is. We really need to protect each other. We really need to think about ourselves and what circle we want around us as we age, and how those friends that we invite into our lives are going to support us and what we can do for them. I recently wrote a workbook. It's called The Friendship Flow, Friendships of Wisdom. And it's available on Amazon if you want to take a look at it. And it has exercises for each of these things. We'll be going over a lot of that in the podcast as we get deeper into this. The next subject I want to bring up in this podcast is connection. How do we build authentic relationships? How does that happen? You know, some people have a real easy time with creating friendships, and some people don't, and maybe need more support. And then we'll get into boundaries for the third week, and growth and joy. And we'll start putting all of these things together. And I hope to have some people on that I've spoken to that will help us dive deeper into all of this and discover what we need to help each other through this process of not only aging, but friendship. So I invite you to email me, KTBUCK123@gmail, or find me on Facebook, Elevated Adventures Yoga, and give me some feedback of what you want to hear and what might help you for building the relationships that are going to bring you into your years of wisdom. Thank you. And I look forward to talking to you again soon.